All right. So we've got a few more people still coming in, but I'm going to go ahead and get started. So this is obviously the Meru Webinar, Making Changes That Stick. And my name is Trish Jonker. I am a remote therapist here at Meru. And maybe some of you have worked with me as we've gone through the program together. I absolutely love my role here with Meru and helping many of you go through some of the different modules that we have as a part of the program. But today we're going to be doing a webinar on the topic, making changes that stick. And so I just wanted to kind of put this one in the middle of January, because for many of us, especially culturally kind of in the West, we tend to set New Year's resolutions, we have intentions, maybe you've set a word for the year. And then now we're kind of a couple of weeks in, and maybe you're not sticking to that as much as you would have liked. Sometimes we have really good intentions, but then actually putting them into practice and changing our life can be difficult. And so today we are going to kind of go over your goals and intentions for this year and create some very specific plans that will help you actually be successful in designing the life that you're looking for. So like I said, right at the top of the hour, we are going to be doing some interactive work today. So please make sure that you have some way of taking notes or writing or journaling as a part of this. You may notice I'll be asking a lot of questions. And so I would love for you to be able to have a paper and a pen, a tablet, your phone, some way for you to be writing to really get the most out of the work that we're going to do today, because I want to make it very practical for you to be able to take home some real strategies that you can use later this week. Also, in terms of questions, my friend Mayu, who is a colleague of mine here, is going to be moderating. There you can see Mayu. So if you have any questions at any time during the program, go ahead and click the Q&A button, and you can enter your questions in there, and she will be checking those out. If they are kind of appropriate questions for me to address in the middle of the webinar, I'm more than happy to be interrupted. So Mayu might do that for me. Otherwise, I have reserved some time at the end of the webinar for us to go over some more general questions at that time. So either way, she'll be checking out the Q&A icon there and making sure that you get all the answers that you need. All right, so we'll go ahead and get started. Oops, there we go. So I wanted to start off with this quote. If you're familiar with the book Atomic Habits by James Clear, he says to be the designer of your world and not merely the consumer of it. And I think for many of us, this rings true, that we live our lives in such a way that we're kind of reacting to what's coming at us. We're reacting in terms of our values and the things, the different spheres of life that we have. And we're not actually taking time to proactively design our world and to create the life that we want. If you're curious more about this topic, I do highly recommend the book Atomic Habits, if you want to write that one down. But today, I'm really proud of you and excited for you to take this hour, because we're going to really take some time to design your world, to create a life that you actually are proud of, that you enjoy, and that's in line with your values. For many of you, this screen is going to look familiar. This is currently in week 10 of the Meru program, where we had you identify some of your top values. Of course, when you look at this list, all of these values are good, right? Like none of them are actually bad, but at different seasons of our life, we spend time nurturing different values. And so just like when you were in the Meru program, we had you do this practice where you went through and you looked at kind of how these values are playing out in your life and what you want to nurture right now. We're going to do that a little bit today as well. So what I would like for you to do is to take a moment, just like you did in the app, and I'd like for you to choose which value your goal falls into today. So if you came today prepared and you have a goal that you are interested in working on, look at these different values and see which one it falls under. If you're not really there yet, then now is a good time just to reflect, just like you did in the program. Look at these different values and decide which one in this current season of life you feel drawn to, you feel like you really want to nurture and focus on in the next couple of weeks or months. So first thing you're going to be writing down, like I said, I'm going to be asking you to write a number of things down today. First thing I want you to write down is which of these values you feel like your goal is going to fall under today. And then you can go ahead and share in the chat if you're comfortable, kind of which area you're focusing on. And then you can kind of see what others in our webinar today are looking at, and kind of see how we're all going to be working together and encouraging each other today as we focus on these different goals. Great. I'm seeing a lot of answers popping up in the chat. That's fantastic. So you've been able to take a moment, look at these values, and we're starting this work of narrowing down what we're working on and how we are going to create and design the life that we want to live. So as we're getting started today, I actually want to work with you on a visualization practice. And so through our Meru program, I know you've done a lot of mindfulness practices. And so to start off today, we're going to do a visualization practice. So what I'd like for you to do is to get into a comfortable position. And you've done this before. You may know a certain way that you'd like to sit when you're practicing, a kind of a place how you'd like to hold your feet. I would encourage you, if you're comfortable, to have your feet firmly placed on the ground, to have your hands maybe on your thighs. If you are comfortable, I would really encourage you for this practice to close your eyes. And just as we're getting into this visualization practice, I would encourage you just to really start slowing your breath, focusing on breathing in through your nose and out through your mouth, and just getting into a bit of a calm, relaxing rhythm with your breathing. And so for this particular practice, we're going to do some visualization. And I'd like for you to visualize a scene in the future where you are living out the value that you chose. So start to imagine, to dream, to visualize in the future. What does your life look like as you are living out that value that you chose? So first, as you're visualizing this, I'd love for you to take a look around the scene and look at where you are. What does it look like where you are? Are you familiar with this place? Is this a new place for you? Where are you right now? Also take a moment and notice who is with you. Who is joining you in this future scene where you are living out your values? What are you doing? What is the activity that you are engaged in? What are you doing? Are you by yourself? Are you with others? And what do you see yourself doing in this scene? And finally, I want you to notice how you feel in this scene. What emotions are coming up for you? So take a moment again and continue to breathe. And as you inhale in through your nose, I want you to really imagine the peace that you are bringing in as you're living out this life according to your values. Breathing in the peace that this kind of a scene brings to you. And then as you exhale out your mouth, I want you to exhale the stress that is leaving your body as you have designed this world. You exhale out the exhaustion, exhale out the tension, and inhale in the peace that comes from this kind of a life. Take one last look around. Notice the scene. Remember what you can from it. Take a couple of last final breaths there. And then when you're ready, slowly open your eyes and come back to the webinar. Now, I want you to take a minute, however you're taking notes today, and jot down what stood out to you from that visualization practice. Where were you? Who was with you? What were you doing? Some of those notes. Take a moment and jot those things down for yourself. I want you to remember what that felt like so that as we create that reality, we're moving towards that scene, that ideal scene that you were able to create in your mind. And then looking at the screen that I have up right now, going a little bit deeper. So looking specifically at the value that you are cultivating, there's some further questions, and take a moment right now and answer those questions. Or if you're not there yet, maybe even write the question down, and maybe that's something that you want to process through on your own later. But let's really visualize and imagine and dream and set up for yourself this future that you want to create. Another general question that I'd have for you to think about is, what makes this particular value, this particular goal important to you right now in January 2020, or whenever you're watching this webinar? What makes this goal for you incredibly important during this particular season of life? Okay. So I want to pause for just a second and to share this quote with you before we go any further. This is a note of caution by a leadership expert that I respect greatly by the name of Marcus Buckingham. And he says, a note of caution: we can never achieve goals that envy sets for us. So looking at your friends and wishing you had what they had is actually a waste of your precious energy. Because we're all unique, and what makes another happy may do the opposite for you. And so that's why advice from others is often nice, but sometimes it can be disappointing when we take that advice. So I'd love for you to continue to look back at your values and your goals and just do a really real check-in in terms of where you're at and where you want to go. And are you setting that goal out of envy because you want what somebody else has? Or is it truly coming from your heart and your values and where you want to take your life? And if it's a little bit more on the envy side, maybe just tweak it, maybe look at it a little bit. Maybe now is a good time to do some revisions on it so that we move forward. We're really going for you, your personality, your values, and the kind of life that you want to create. Okay. So we're now going to get really specific about how we want to move forward to create that vision. And many of you probably have heard of the term SMART goals. It was created in 1981 by George Duran. And we are going to go through and specifically create some SMART goals based on your unique passion and value. Okay. So as you can probably imagine, SMART is an acronym. So we're going to go through the letters. The first one is to be specific. So when you look at the goals that you want for this year, if you really want them to stick, if you want those changes to actually take root in your life, you have got to be specific. And so I'd love for you right now to look at what specific actions you need to take, when you want to take them, where you're going to take them, who or what's going to be involved. And start to brainstorm a little bit. How can you make your goal more specific? Sometimes, for example, if people are looking at that relationship piece, they'll say, I want to spend more time with my kids. That's my New Year's resolution. I want to spend more time with my kids. I want to build better relationships with my kids. And that is a fantastic value and a great goal. But you got to get specific with it if you want it to actually happen. And so in order to do that, you might say, I am going to take my children to the park every Saturday for an hour. That's now going to get super specific, and that's really going to cultivate that relationship that you're trying to build with your children. So that's just an example, but for yourself right now, hopefully you've been able to take some time and get really specific with your goal. The next one is to make it measurable. Goals need to be measurable. How will you know when you've achieved your goal? How will you know when you've made progress towards your goal? So take a moment right now. Look at the goals that you have written down. Are they measurable? And if they're not, can you tweak them a little bit so that they can be measurable? And can you put in some milestones along the way so that you can celebrate your progress? So we don't just want to celebrate the achievement of the goal. It's helpful when we can celebrate along the way and to note some progress. So what are some things that you can do along the way that will help you make your goal a little bit more measurable? The next one is attainable. And attainable refers to the resources that you have. So do you have the resources that you need to achieve your goal? If not, are there some resources that you need to accumulate, or do you need to change your goal a little bit because it's not really attainable for you? So one of the examples I would say is, maybe you set a goal of wanting to run a marathon in 2022. And for many people, that's an attainable goal. Maybe they've been running shorter races. They've been running for a long time. They're in really good shape. Running a marathon could be an attainable goal. But for others of you, and you know who you are, that's not an attainable goal this year, right? You haven't run in years. And so a marathon is not an attainable goal. So maybe you might want to bring that back a little bit and say, maybe I want to do a 10K, right? Something a little bit more attainable based on the resources that you have right now. Secondly, and this is kind of similar to attainable, is realistic. What is realistic? And this is kind of based on like your other commitments, maybe your current level of health, maybe, your time commitments, your financial status. Is your goal right now realistic? So look at it and figure out, because you might say, you know what, I'm also, my family is a really important value to me. And this goal that I've chosen is not going to fit in with the time commitments that I have available. Or, my job is really busy right now, and I don't have the ability to do that career development I was looking at. So it's not that you necessarily need to throw the goal out, but maybe now is a good time to tweak it to make it really realistic so that you can be successful in it. We're setting you up to be successful so that that change really sticks. And then finally, we want to make it timely. Set some time limits, some date limits, maybe set some progress check-ins, and look at your goal and see how you want it to follow through over the course of the next couple of weeks or couple of months. So look at your goal right now and say, are there specific milestones and markers that you can put in so that you can measure your progress? So for example, if your goal would be around maybe a spiritual practice or engaging in meditation or mindfulness, and maybe your end goal is that you are doing it, let's just say 15 minutes a day, 7 days a week. Well, you might not want to start with that. That might be your end goal. So maybe you want to start with 3 minutes a day, twice a week. And maybe you set up right now, making it timely, realistic, that you're going to do that for 2 weeks, then you're going to increase it for 2 weeks, then you're going to increase it for 2 weeks, so that you've got some milestones built in, and then you've got your date where you'd like to celebrate, and that would be something more at the end. Does that make sense to everybody? Okay. So I have a quote here by Michael Hyatt, and Michael Hyatt says, Most people spend more time planning a 1-week vacation than they actually spend planning their life. And I think this is true for many of us. Probably some of you are smiling and nodding right now at home, that you will put a ton of time into researching, getting price comparisons, looking at TripAdvisor reviews for a 1-week vacation. Then you actually sit down and go through these kinds of exercises in terms of planning your life and creating the life you want. So I really encourage you, taking the time today is fantastic. And then also over the next couple of days, reviewing these notes and getting really specific on what your SMART goal is going to look like. Again, and I've mentioned this before, but I wanted to come back to it. Let's look at who will help you achieve your goal. And this can work in 2 ways. It might be that you need a mentor. It might be that you need to network a little bit. It might be that you need some people, maybe a partner who will do this with you. It might also just be that you need to share your SMART goal with somebody else so that they can be your cheerleader. They could be your accountability partner. So take a minute right now and write down some names or one name of somebody who will help you do this. There's an African proverb that says, if you want to go fast, go alone, but if you want to go far, go together. And this is the type of situation where for your change to really stick, you need a bit of community. You're going to need others who will help you along this path. And so write down some names right now of who you think would help you to achieve your goal. Another one is to right now start thinking about kind of the negative side of it, but some obstacles. What might get in the way of you achieving your goal? And how can you plan for that starting today? So there's a great book called Tiny Habits by BJ Fogg. And in that book, he says, an important part of successful habit formation is trying something. And if it doesn't work right, revising it. Let me say that again. If it doesn't work right, revising it without getting discouraged, without blaming yourself, recognizing that this is a design process. You are working through and designing your life. And we can expect that things are going to get in the way. We can expect that things are not going to go completely right. So let's plan for that now. So again, looking at your list and thinking through your goals and values right now, what are some potential obstacles that you can see right now that might be difficult for you? And how can you plan for that? What are some options that will help you be successful? And you can plan around those obstacles. And then also just really accept and hear me saying that things might not go right. And when that happens, don't give up, just revise it. Just look at it and say, okay, that didn't work. I've never done this before. I'm going to tweak it. And then you tweak it again and you tweak it again. And eventually you'll be able to get to your goal. Again, where will you work on your goal? I mentioned this briefly before, but I wanted to come back to it. Where will be a good space for you to work on your goal? For example, if it's some type of personal development, career development, spiritual development, mindfulness practices, is there a particular place that would be helpful for you to go to where you can cultivate a space in your house where you can work on your goal? Maybe it's, getting out into the community, and are there places that you need to go to visit, to explore where you will be able to work on your goal? Write down right now some locations that you think you will need to be a part of in order to achieve your goal. And when. I am a big fan of this. If any of you worked with me when you were in the Meru program, you know that I talk a lot about there's flexibility built in here, but it's super important if you can set aside a particular time where you know you'll be working on your goal. And so what will that look like for you? Is there a time of day where you know it will be best for you to work on your goal? Is there a day of the week that will be best for you to work on your goal? I'm getting super specific and drilling down here, but this is how your change will stick, is when you've got these kinds of things laid out ahead of time. So figuring that out and even putting it in your calendar of this is the time frame that I'm going to be working on my goal. And then some reminders. let's just be honest with each other that we will not remember to follow through on our goals, and we all need to create reminders. But again, we're all very different. And so different reminders work for different people. And so I'm going to throw out a ton of ideas, and hopefully one of them might stick for you where you can say, that's a really good one for me. That would work and help me to remember. So the first one is tangible reminders. And one idea that I've used with some of my private practice clients is, for example, I'll use the example of relationships. So if you were trying to, let's say, build a more positive relationship with your children, and you wanted to compliment them more, you want your language to be more positive around your children, you could put like hair ties on your left wrist, or bracelets of some kind, or some type of rubber bands or something on your left wrist. And you could have different colors. Maybe if you have 2 or 3 kids, you would have their favorite colors. And then as you compliment them, you would move that particular hair tie, bracelet, rubber band over to your right wrist. So for example, if your kids' favorite colors are red, blue, and purple, you've got your 3 hair ties. As you compliment Johnny's blue, it goes over to your right wrist. As you compliment the other one, and then you're done and you take them off for the day. It's kind of a, in the old days where they talked about tying a string around your finger. It's anything tangible that you can do that will remind you of what you're supposed to be working on that day. Another one is, for example, if you want to get out and walk more, if that's part of your goal, you might want to put your walking shoes on early. If you know you've got 2 back-to-back meetings and then you want to go for your walk, put the walking shoes on before the meetings, because you'll feel them, you'll see them. It'll be a tangible reminder that you've got to get that walk in after those meetings are done. Another one is visual reminders. Visual reminders are more what we're used to. It's the Post-it notes, putting something on the refrigerator, putting something on the bathroom mirror, creating a vision board. It's anything that's visual that you can have up and around your house that will remind you of the work that you're doing towards your goal. Those might seem cheesy, but they actually, especially at the beginning, are so essential in order for your change to stick. The other thing that I really like, and this is a bit more creative, is when we were talking about when you were doing that visualization practice and when you were looking at the life that you want to create, if you've had a glimpse of that in the past, if there is a picture of you kind of doing something close to that work, living that kind of a life, or if you can find a piece of art or something visual that reminds you of that life, print that picture, frame it, hang it up on the wall, so that you start to surround yourself with images that visually remind you of the life that you are creating. And then you can see them and it will, it'll get you back on track. Auditory is kind of, you probably know, it's that ding on your phone, right? It's setting up those reminders for yourself, especially if you put it in your calendar, and then your calendars can make an auditory noise to remind you. I'm a big fan of having different sounds on my phone. And right now, you can make all kinds of different sounds, but a particular sound that reminds you of the life that you're creating for yourself. So it's not just a ding maybe, but it's something else. That can be fun as well. And so getting really creative with how you are reminding yourself might really help this to stick. So just think for yourself, like, what works for you, your own unique personality. You've tried goals before, what works and what doesn't. So look at this and think and write down for yourself, how will you be reminding yourself of what you are looking for? Another one, and this is, I wanted to give credit to both of these authors because I find this particular method to be similar in both of these books. But again, in BJ Fogg's book, Tiny Habits, and then in James Clear's book, Atomic Habits, they both reference a very similar strategy. BJ Fogg calls it the ABC method, and James Clear calls it the habit stacking method. Basically, what it means is you attach your new behavior to something that's already an existing part of your routine. So the easiest example for many people, except myself, I don't drink coffee, but for many of you, you probably start your day with coffee. And you don't need a reminder on your phone to pour yourself a cup of coffee in the morning. You probably have a routine that's already established where either you've pre-programmed a machine or you have a routine in your house that you get up and you make yourself coffee and it's ready for you in the morning. There's no visual reminders. There's no calendar reminders. It's an existing part. It's automatic. So what you would do then is you would try to attach these new habits onto an existing habit that's already working for you. And so BJ Fogg says your anchor is the existing habit that's already happening. The behavior is the new behavior that you're trying to add, and then you always celebrate it. So let's just say, for example, if you wanted to do some personal or professional development and you have, let's say, maybe a book that you want to read or some work that you want to do to learn about something developing yourself or your career. Maybe you set a goal of reading 3 pages per day. You would do that with your coffee. So you're already going to get your coffee. You put that book by the coffee maker. And then as soon as you get your coffee, you sit down and you read your 3 pages. You're much more likely, according to these 2 authors and the research they've done, you're much more likely to get the work done when you stack it with another behavior. And then BJ Fogg says, and then when you're done, you celebrate that. You encourage yourself. You say, great, I can't believe you did it. Like you did it again. Great job. The more that you can stack those things together, the more successful you're likely to become. The other piece, and I've talked about this a little bit, but I wanted to get more specific on it, is to set yourself up to be successful. You want to create an environment that works for you, not against you. And so wherever you're spending your time and working towards your goals, you want to create an environment that's really going to work for you. So the first one is designing your home so that it's easy for you to work on your goal. For me, like one of my goals last year was really to drink more water. And so what I ended up doing is I bought a bunch, I have one right here. I bought a bunch of what I thought were pretty cups with straws because I knew that that would be better for me. And I have them in all of the places where I sit in the house. So I have one in my bedroom. I have this one here on my desk. I have another one near where I sit and watch TV. So that in those kind of 3 frequent places in my house, I have it sitting right there and it's always full. And then I'm much more likely to continue to drink water. So what is it with your goal? And maybe write this down right now. What can you design in your home so that it makes it easier for you to work on your goal? How can you make some simple changes around your house? For some people, the most common one would be like to actually clean out your kitchen, removing foods that you're trying to avoid and buying and restocking with foods that you're trying to increase. And I would even add on that, if you're trying to, let's say, eat more vegetables, make it easier for you to eat more vegetables, right? So you would actually like chop them up and put them in a place where it's easily accessible, like right next to your desk. The other piece is to change your language. This I heard most commonly around smokers. When people stop smoking, they'll start to change their language. And instead of saying like, I'm trying to quit smoking, they'll say, I'm a non-smoker. Same thing with like running. Instead of saying, I want to be a runner, you might say, I am a runner. And even though you might just be starting out with some walking and running, you could say, I am a runner. It's that mindset shift that we want to accomplish. So when you change your language and when you speak about yourself, I am a connected parent. I have a good relationship with my children. I am, whatever it is in those other categories that you want to work towards. What is the language? And maybe write it down right now. Take a minute with the journaling that you've been doing in this webinar today. What is the language? I am blah, blah, blah. And start using that language as you're talking about yourself this year. And then I talked about this a little bit, but surround yourself with media that inspires you towards your goal. So when you think about the podcasts you listen to, the books that you're reading, the movies and TV shows that you're watching, the music that you're listening to, are they inspiring you towards your goal? And if not, are there some small changes that you could make Is there a documentary maybe that you want to try to watch that would inspire you because it's about a person who had a similar journey to you? You know, what kinds of things are you watching and listening to? And maybe do you want to switch it up? Just add a podcast into your device that you could listen to maybe once a week that might be a little bit more inspirational on the topic that you are working towards, so that you're creating this whole environment that supports you and helps you achieve your goal, if that makes sense. So I would like to open it up. As I mentioned, I promised I would leave some time for some questions. I'd love if you don't have any questions, but you are wanting to stick around. We'll be having a bit of a practical conversation right now. And also in the chat, I would love to see what specific goals that you were able to create. How did you, through this webinar, hone down your goals and make them more specific? And go ahead and throw them up in the chat. We'd love to see that. But yeah, if you have any questions on, you know, one of these points and how you want to make it a little bit more specific, a little bit more measurable, timely, those types of things, go ahead and put those in the Q&A, and Mayu can help me out with moderating that.
Thank you, Trish. This was fantastic. I would also like to, since we have a bit of time, that if somebody has a question that you would like to ask live, you can also raise your hand and then I can unmute you and then you can ask your question directly from Trish. So either raise your hand or put your question in the Q&A. We can start. I see that there are some questions here. My goal is to improve my mental health, specifically to be more accepting, content, self-assured, and loving towards myself. How do I measure that? All other parts of the SMART goal I can figure out.
Yeah, how would you measure that? That's a great one. Did you say it was accepting?
More accepting, content, self-assured, and loving towards myself.
What comes to mind for me first is the unit that we have in the Meru program on self-compassion. And there are some, you know, specific strategies that we ask you to do that week, where we are asking you to do compassionate activities for yourself. So that's the first thing that comes to mind, is for you to set a goal for yourself that maybe every day you would engage in an action of self-compassion. And then that would be something that you could write down. That would even be something that you could do the hair ties on your wrist, where you start the day off with it on your left wrist. And then when you complete an act of compassion towards yourself, you move it over to your right wrist or take it off. But I think that would really help you to be more accepting and loving and compassionate towards yourself. That's the first thing that comes to mind. But if somebody else has another idea, you can put that up in the chat as well.
There is something on the chat. What about a gratitude journal for being self-compassionate? I think it's referring to this.
Yeah, no, I love gratitude journals, and there's a lot of science behind a gratitude journal, which is one of the main reasons we have it as an integral part of our treatment program. So yeah, anytime you can pause and just focus on gratitude, focus on what's going well, because we have that negativity bias, right? We keep switching to the negative. So the more that you can intentionally choose to create that new neural pathway in your brain where you're choosing to see the positive, you're choosing to be grateful, it can actually really help you to feel better, to feel less depressed and less anxious, those types of things. So absolutely, that's another great idea. And for some people, journaling is great. There's some apps that can help you with a gratitude journal. There's also even just being mindful. You know, if you're not the kind of person that has that or desire to journal, even just taking a moment before you go to sleep and just saying, I'm going to think of 3 things that I'm grateful for today, 3 things that went well, 3 things that I want to accept about myself, 3 things I love about myself. that can really shift, you know, your views about yourself and your mood for sure.
Okay, then there are some other questions. I'm a perfectionist. How do I deal with setbacks and relapses? And how can I be kinder to myself to carry on?
Yes. And that's exactly why I'm similar. I'm very much perfectionist as well. So I get that for sure. But I think that's why I threw in that quote about, you know, setbacks will happen. So part of that is just embracing it right now, embracing and being prepared for it. So as a perfectionist, you're probably also really good at planning. And so taking a minute today or this week and saying, what will be the setbacks? And just being very realistic about the fact that they will come. Because there's no one on this webinar right now who will say that their life has turned out exactly as planned every single day, right? That's just real life. And so the more that you can radically accept things as they come, radical acceptance is a DBT skill. And the more that you can, as it comes, you can kind of laugh about it and say, there it is. I knew it was going to come. There it is. There's a setback. There's a problem. There's an issue. I wasn't perfect. And I accept it, even going back, like we just said, with some self-compassion and some gratitude for what is going well, and then tweaking it instead of, you know, for many of us, we just give up on the plan because it didn't work, coming back and saying, okay, I've never done this before, so I need to tweak it a little bit. What does this look like? And that might involve, you know, talking to a therapist or a mentor, or it might just be some personal reflection to say, okay, this is what's going to be coming up for me in the next few months. This is what's going to come up in the next few days. How can I be successful? What do I need to tweak? Maybe my goal was not attainable. Maybe it was not realistic. I need to tweak it a little bit so that I can actually make some steps forward to design the life that I want.
Fantastic. Next one. What's the balance between making your goal value-based versus outcome-dependent?
That's a great question. It falls under, if any of you are interested in what I like, polarity management, which is a passion of mine as well, which is looking at two things that are seemingly opposite, but actually both are essential. We can't just live in a world that's outcome dependent, and we can't just live in a world that's values dependent, right? We have to be able to flow between both of them in order to be successful. So I would say your goal needs to have a bit of both. But at the same time, there's going to be times where you're leaning more towards the other, but both need to happen, right? Did I answer that question, or Mayu, can you?
Maybe the question asker can write in the chat if that was what they were looking for, and then we can get back to it if they would like to get some more clarity on that.
Because my answer is not great, because I'm basically saying both.
Okay, I just got an answer that yes, you answered.
Oh, okay. Okay, good. And if you're interested in more on that, I highly recommend the book by Barry Johnson. It's called Polarity Management.
Okay, next one. There are so many great tips and processes to help here. I often overwhelm myself by trying to do as much of this at once and ignore my priorities. What tips do you have to take a new concept and effectively segue it into your life that helps rather than becoming another stress? Right,
exactly. Because that's the last thing you need right now. So that's why I would go back to that realistic piece. And creating some long-term goals. So looking at all these things you might be excited about that you've heard about, and writing those down, and then choosing one that is realistic for you in this season and giving it a timeline. So you're picking one goal, you're going to work on it for 3 months or whatever it is, that's like a realistic amount. And picking one that's realistic with your current commitments, with your current health, energy levels, commitments with loved ones, financial commitments, whatever it is. And keeping the other ones on the list. They're there, they're important, you're going to get to them, but you can't do them right now because it's better to focus on one thing at a time and really do it well and accomplish that goal. Give yourself those milestones and that finish line. And then once you've accomplished it, then going back to your list and then looking at that list and saying, okay, what's next? Where am I going to go next? And it might be that they flow nicely in a list, or it might be something completely different that you decide to try. But you're absolutely right. That's a great point, is if you have too much, you're not going to do anything well. And then you're actually just going to get more frustrated and start blaming yourself or getting discouraged, like I mentioned before, because it's not working. And it's going to work when you're super specific and focused. You're giving yourself reminders and you've got a regular plan of how you're going to go and accomplish that first goal.
Great. That is awesome advice. Just read it from the chat. Okay, I have 2 more questions here. The first one being, how flexible should values be? When is it okay to sacrifice some of your values for the happiness of others? This goes more into the values bucket than the goals one, but it's a good one.
But it's true. It does flow together. And that's kind of that polarity management piece of how much am I focused on creating the life that I want? And how much am I focused on creating the life that other people want? And if you are a hermit, it's really easy because you can just focus on creating the life you want. If you want to have any kind of relationships with any other humans, you're also going to need to put a lot of attention into helping your children, your partner, other people create the life that they want. Your boss is going to tell you the life that they want at work. There's always going to be other people that put demands on you. And it's important for us to be able to flow between both of those, to do both at the same time. So again, bringing it right back to that attainable, realistic piece of the SMART goal is how much are others demanding of you? And there'd be a bit in there also on boundaries. I mean, are you a people pleaser and are you just working to make other people's lives better? That might be some personal work that you might want to attend to. But if it's on a healthy space, yes, you need to be able to be realistic in your goal planning of your children are going to need you to spend a lot of time helping them design the life that they want, getting them to soccer practice, getting them, the parent teacher conferences, whatever you have to do. You would probably also have a partner who's got certain goals and ideas and values. And then, but essentially, if you want to really push through and create the life that you want, you have to make space for your own values. And you have to make space where you are designing and creating the life that you want. Because if you don't do both, you will end up resenting those that you love. You'll end up harboring, negative feelings towards them. And now you're grumbling while you're driving your kid to soccer practice because you're not getting to do what you want. So it's creating a realistic amount of space for both of those things together and tweaking your goals a little bit so that maybe you're not getting everything you want, but you're absolutely creating space for some of what you want.
Great. Okay, so the last question that I see here is, this webinar was amazing and super helpful. Where can we stay informed for new webinars in the future? Do you want to take that or shall I?
I think you can go ahead and take that one.
So we'll be informing you all via email. So you'll actually get the recording of this webinar into your inbox, and then also for all the webinars in the future, we'll be inviting you to those. So just look out for an email from us, and
Yeah, and I would say too, we've got a great lineup of other therapists. So it might be the therapist that walked through your treatment program. But we've got a lot of topics, a lot of different therapists, different voices for you to hear from. So it's going to be a really exciting year. We're hopeful that you'll join us for all of those. So I think that's it. Anything else, Mayu, from your end?
Thank you all for joining.
Good. So yeah, we wish you all the best, and we hope to see you next month. But I'm going to go ahead and wrap things up then.